Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Legacy Building Solutions, 10 Years, 10 Lessons Learned, with your presenter, Matt Vanskoy, Building and Project Design Consultant for Legacy Building Solutions. My name is Maria Ma, the Marketing Campaign Coordinator for Engineering.com, and I'll be your moderator today. First, a few housekeeping items to cover. Today's webinar will be recorded, then available for on-demand replay on Engineering.com. For attending this full live session, you'll receive a PDH certificate within 48 hours. If you have any questions, please submit directly in this webinar interface and we'll try to address all questions during Q&A. Now let's kick it off with a poll question. Who do we have joining us today? Are you an engineer, an architect, contractor, county engineer, or other profession? Please let us know. We'll give you a moment to respond. Looks like we have at a whopping 69% engineer, 17% says other, and 8% architect. Thank you, participants. Now, without further ado, I'll pass it over to our presenter. Matt, over to you.
Thank you. 10 years ago, Legacy started its business with the express purpose of revolutionizing the fabric building industry and changing the way fabric structures were designed, manufactured, and installed. 10 years and hundreds of buildings later, we took a look in the rearview mirror to see if we, A, revolutionized the industry as we planned, and B, met our own goals about quality, innovation, safety, and customer satisfaction. At the risk of sounding like we're bragging, we think we met all of our goals and exceeded them at times. Along the way of the course, we learned a few things, and that's the subject of this webinar, what Legacy has learned through our experience manufacturing fabric structures over the last 10 years. Let's start with our product, our sole product, the thing we've concentrated our attention on for a decade, the rigid frame tension fabric structure. Sometimes it's easier to say what it isn't. It isn't a tent. It isn't a bubble, meaning an air-supported dome. It isn't a monocover structure. It isn't a web truss structure. It isn't a single tube structure, and it isn't a tensile fabric structure. If you want an explanation of all those types of fabric buildings, please send me an email, and I would be happy to share our buyer's guide with you as it breaks down all the differences between fabric structures. What a tension fabric structure is, according to us and our years of developing the technology, it includes a solid steel tapered I-beam frame, PVC fabric cladding, our proprietary fabric is called Exotech, patented tensioning system, separate fabric panels that make up the roof and walls, and corrosion protected steel using epoxy coatings. That's the short list. Each of those elements are part of our 10-year story, and we'll discuss how they came about and what they do for us and our customers. We have a video here that showcases our 10 years in business, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we do. Legacy began operations in 2010, but the founders and many of its original employees had 13 years of experience installing fabric buildings manufactured by other companies. The journey began with the notion that fabric buildings could be better, be different, and be something that the world could, something that would create excitement with our customers. The look, the feel, and the structure of fabric buildings were due for a makeover, and Legacy was eager to reimagine what the future of the industry could be. Ben Fox, our founder and CEO, wanted to make a better fabric building based on what he had learned during the years of installing other manufacturers' buildings. In particular, he wanted to address the quality and long-term durability of a fabric structure. He also wanted to design a building that looked like a traditional building with clean lines, a crisp exterior, an amazing interior, and an overall beautiful feel. Some changes the company made right away, and some of the advancements came over time through research and development. Lesson 1 is steel. We must begin with steel because we always begin with steel. One of the changes we made to the world of fabric structures is designing a frame of solid steel tapered I-beams, and there's a lot to unpack here. First, solid steel rigid I-beams meant two things to us: strength and engineering certainty. With solid steel rigid I-beams, as opposed to hollow tubes or web trusses, we could design or engineer a structure that could withstand snow, wind, and seismic conditions all over the world. The technology for tapered column I-beams was developed in the metal building industry, and this engineering design is utilized and recognized globally. Legacy has a building in the Andes Mountains at 9,000 feet above sea level, a sports complex on the frozen fields of northern Alberta, and a hangar in Guam designed to survive up to 195 miles per hour wind speed. We are also approved to build in the Hurricane Alley of Florida. Solid steel rigid I-beams also opened up opportunities for us as designers and to our customers as building owners. We'll talk more about these options in lesson 10. Here we show a quick video that will provide you a visual of our rigid I-beam frames. Engineering certainty meant a couple of things. First, it meant that the tension fabric structures were aligned with the engineering standards of the rest of the world, meaning the world of traditional buildings. Our fabric structures meet or exceed the local building codes of the states as well as the international building codes. Steel and engineering certainty allowed us to meet almost any standard. Secondly, we designed our buildings with the same software used throughout the pre-engineered metal building industry. That standard meant that almost any engineer could pick up our drawings and blueprints and instantly understand what we were doing. For example, if a local regulator wanted to take our designs to his county engineer to check them out, that engineer would be able to read the blueprint without needing any translation. To us, good engineering is not proprietary, it's universal, and it's transparent. Our first building used a solid steel frame, was for Archer's Daniel Midland Agricultural Storage in Ottawa, Illinois. It was a pretty standard job and nothing really remarkable to say about it until last summer. Last summer, that area of Iowa and Illinois was hit by a derecho, a large storm consisting of straight line winds in a 250-mile wide swath. This storm had 70 to 75 mile per hour winds, gusting to 100 miles per hour, and 15 tornadoes. Some described the derecho as an inland hurricane. I have personal experience with this. I'm actually located in eastern Iowa myself, basically right in the middle of what that thing was. It was 2 hours of just as what was described, 70 to 100 mile per hour winds. My area, my neighborhood, we had roofs torn off of houses. I personally had a tree and fence completely taken out. It was absolutely destructive what went through here. But our first steel beam building in Ottawa, Illinois for ADM, it came through the storm without a scratch, as well as the other legacy buildings in that storm. Lesson 2 is Exotech. In 2017, Legacy switched its fabric cladding to Exotech. Before that, the industry standard was a polyethylene fabric, and it was okay. It did the job. We knew there was a better option though, and that was PVC fabric. PVC fabric is tougher and it withstands UV rays much better due to its heavier coating. We chose a proprietary fabric designed for Legacy that has a polyester scrim covered with PVC film on both sides, followed by a layer of lacquer on both sides. Exotech was tough. It's tough enough to allow us to give our cladding a 25-year warranty for the 28-ounce fabric. Here shortly is going to be a video that demonstrates a test that we performed on the Exotech fabric. So we weren't sure how the fabric would stand up to this kind of extreme stress. But there are three things to note here. First, this wasn't just a test of the fabric, it was a test of our entire building system. The panel that you'll see that he is driving on is identical to one of our roof panels, right down to the steel frames, the keter rails, and the 1/2-inch bolts and the tensioning system. The second thing to watch is the fabric panel itself. We weld our fabric panels together in-house using special tools that heat bond our seams together. The seams are just as strong as the fabric itself. The panel he is driving all over is one of our welded panels, and if you look closely, you can see the seam. Finally, the fabric panel itself was sagging quite a bit when we took the skid loader off. With that much stress, we thought that sag would be permanent, but Legacy's ExoTech fabric returned to the original shape the next day with no maintenance or retensioning done. That'll be shown here on this next slide. So our first building was for Humboldt County Event Complex in Winnemucca, Nevada. This is a beautiful equestrian building that's actually a hybrid with steel-clad walls and an ExoTech roof. It's used for rodeos, archery, sports and fairground events year-round. Natural light and superior acoustics create a more natural environment and reduce shadows and sounds that can otherwise spook the horses. It's a 54,400 square foot structure, and it's designed for 5 pounds per square foot snow load, 120 mile per hour wind speed, and a seismic zone D. Lesson 3 is tension. We at Legacy use proprietary materials in our buildings, but we also have a patented attachment system. Our team realized that by using ExoTech, the physical properties of the fabric itself would allow our installers a better option for stretching the cladding onto our frames. This stretching is called tensioning, and it's another thing that makes our structures different. Many fabric building manufacturers use a keter rail to attach fabric to the frame. The industry standard system uses a keter rail attached to the trusses using small Tech screws. Because this does not allow for horizontal movement of the keter rail for biaxial tensioning, the installer must either flex the trusses or use telescoping purlins to move the frame during fabric installation. The other challenge with this system is that it depends on all the Tech screws being installed with proper torque. Tech screws are often over-torqued, reducing the hold-down capacity due to human error. Additionally, the small Tech screws create flex points in the softer aluminum keter extrusion, creating possible failure points. This short clip will show the Legacy's patented attachment system. So as mentioned, this is Legacy's patented attachment system. Each fabric panel is typically 20 feet wide, and it's secured to the frame using a keter rail that slides horizontally on the top flange of the frame, eliminating the need to detach or flex the frames during installation. Instead of Tech screws, we actually use 1/2-inch bolts to attach the rail to the frame. In this video, you're able to watch and you'll actually see the tensioning system itself. During installation, we also use horizontal mechanical tension to stretch the fabric to the recommended level, keeping it taut and preventing friction for the life of the building. There is regular support and tension both vertically and horizontally, which is critical to ensure a wrinkle-free finish and a long fabric life. There is also greater vertical up and over tensioning because the fabric is tensioned in a straight line rather than going around any curves or radii. What this means for our customers is that Legacy buildings do not require fabric retensioning after installation. Other fabric buildings typically require retensioning of their fabric, not just once, but maybe multiple times over the life of their building. Ours does not. In fact, when we talk about our structures being virtually maintenance-free, our patented tensioning system is one reason for that. Cleveland Heights Salt Storage was the first building that utilized our patented fabric attachment system and tensioning system. The building is 90 feet wide and has one enclosed end wall. The straight side walls are 15 foot high and secured to 1 foot tall cast-in-place piers, a cast-in-place pier foundation. It's designed for 30-pound snow loads and 90-mile-per-hour winds. All building steel components and hardware were hot dip galvanized, and the fabric is flame retardant. And the primary use of the building was salt storage. Lesson 4 is corrosion. Some of Legacy's earliest buildings involved salt storage, mining chemical storage, and fertilizer storage. We took an early interest in corrosion because many of our clients had very corrosive environments due to the materials that they stored. Our steel is very important to our structures, so protecting it became a focus for our company. For many years, hot dip galvanizing was the answer. That method slowed down the corrosion significantly, but it didn't technically prevent the corrosion. And that's one reason we began to expand our product offering to include epoxy coatings. As I mentioned, we have clients that require the best corrosion protection. In the case of the mining sector, we are working on a project in which copper concentrate will be stored, and that actually reacts chemically with galvanized coatings. So epoxy was the solution that precisely fit their needs. We committed to providing epoxy-coated steel to our customers for a couple of reasons. One, better corrosion protection than hot dip galvanizing. And two, easier to repair if the surface is damaged. In 2019, we added a new manufacturing plant to our headquarters. It's a state-of-the-art paint facility that applies high-performance epoxy coatings for steel beams and steel supporting pieces we use in our tension fabric structures. We began working with different epoxy products to come up with the best coatings for different environments, from slightly corrosive to highly corrosive. Once we got our epoxy coatings where we wanted them, we tested them. In an aggressive 2,000-hour salt fog test that was conducted on samples of epoxy-coated members as well as hot dip galvanized steel members. The report is still in progress, but preliminary results showed that the epoxy coatings significantly outperformed galvanization. We offer a 15-year warranty on our corrosive environment intended epoxy coatings. Lesson 5 is installation. Before Legacy was launched in 2010, many of our associates worked installing the buildings of other companies. We have a long tradition in fabric building installation, which led us to our own tensioning system, which I have described. That long tradition also convinced us using our own crews to install our structures was vital to the success of the company. And here, Mariah will post another poll question.
Okay, attendees, please let us know. Are you looking for a building soon or just beginning to investigate? If looking soon, is it within 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9, or still researching? Looks like we have 84% is still researching, 7% at 0 to 3 months, and 4% for 3 to 6 and 6 to 9. Thanks for letting us know. And Matt, back to you.
Thank you. As I've described, we do things differently, so we needed experienced, well-trained installation teams implementing our processes. It wasn't something we could farm out to subcontractors or local construction teams. Getting the installation right was an absolute. The processes we had built into our structures required the best teams possible. Our installation crews are 3 to 6 person teams that travel the North American continent and the world installing our buildings. They're on the road for most of the year. That kind of lifestyle is really tough, so finding the right people for the job is a challenge. On the plus side, though, we can recruit them from anywhere in the country, not just near our Minnesota headquarters. When an installation team shows up, they're ready to work. They're often working long hours and during the weekends. They are also trained to our own safety requirements as well as the safety requirements of our customers. We often get comments from our customers about their work ethic, their reliability, and their attention to detail, but don't just take my word for it. This was testimony from Joe Bitter of Alliant Energy. Also, the project was known as IEI Barge. He was just very impressed with how our crews were always working diligently, staying ahead of schedule, and following the stringent safety guidelines. This project was 2 140 by 360 salt storage structures for CM and Sons. They were very impressed with just how quickly our crews were able to erect the buildings. They showed up in about 3 weeks, installed both these structures. Another testimony in regards to our installation team is from Joe Balge of the City of Davenport Public Works. He was very impressed with our team's responsiveness throughout the entire project. As you can see, a comment we get again and again is how fast our crews can put up a building. Often our crews can install a building for a client in a matter of days or weeks, not months or years. They can do that because we, as an organization, have streamlined every step of the building process. We do all the sales, design, engineering, as well as the manufacturing of both the solid steel frames and the fabric cladding. Because we do almost everything in-house at Legacy, we can control the logistics. That means the workers in the steel manufacturing plant will make sure the right parts are on the truck, and even more importantly, the steel is stacked in the right order. You can imagine how much faster a crew can proceed on a building when everything, steel and fabric cladding, comes off the truck in the proper order and is precisely manufactured. That synergy between our manufacturing units and our installation crews makes a huge difference on the construction site. Lesson 6 is customization. Early on, Legacy decided that building off-the-shelf prefabricated fabric structures was not a good fit for the innovations we were trying to implement. Instead, we decided to custom design each building to the needs of the customer. No two customers are the same, and no two projects are the same. The three things that people assume about customization are: it's expensive, it's time-consuming, and the quality can be compromised. We knew our challenge as a company was to address the issue of cost, time, and quality when it came to our customized structures. Some construction companies use customization as an excuse to charge a lot and tack on add-ons as the project goes forward. We decided to combat that with transparent, upfront design and clear communication. For example, our design team will give you an exact price before signing any contracts. Since we use our own crews to construct a building, our customers don't get blindsided by costs from subcontracted crews. Another strength of a fabric structure, even a customized one, is they're typically easier on your budget than traditional materials like wood and brick. A testimonial from Tom Tarr of Bel Air Mountain was that he was very impressed with how compatible and how conventional our buildings were and how they were able to tie into other buildings. Another fear is if you choose a customized building, it'll take forever to complete the construction. We have already talked about how our installation teams are able to finish a project so quickly. In the same way, Legacy's design process allows us to tailor each building for our customer without adding cost or time to the process. Our designers get the drawings finalized. The project is handed off to the steel and fabric manufacturing plants, and the whole building is loaded onto trucks before being shipped to the site. Because so much of what we do is handled in-house, there are fewer chances that someone can drop the ball. Jerry, who is the general contractor for this project in Lee County, was very complimentary of our outfit because we were so responsive throughout the submittal process, which really helped with their permit process. The quality of a customized structure is sometimes an issue because some builders will cut corners. We have incorporated quality into every aspect of our processes, from our solid steel frames to our Exotech fabric to our patented fabric attachment system. We are constantly looking for and finding ways to make our buildings better. We are proud of our ISO 9001 certification every year, as well as our CSA A660 and achieving Florida product approval, one of the toughest product testing agencies in the construction industry. One of the primary reasons Legacy Building Solutions was established was to introduce a new standard of quality in the building of tension fabric structures. We saw improvements that could be made to fabric buildings, and we made them. Even though every building we create is different, we will not compromise on the fundamental components that are part of every structure. That's why our customers trust that the custom structures they order will meet or exceed their expectations for quality materials, quality engineering, and quality construction. This is Fox Creek Sports Multiplex, and it is one of our biggest, most complex projects. It challenged our customization process at every level. This multiplex is one large building divided into 3 sections. It contains a full hockey arena, a complete aquatic center with a pool, the administration and an administration center and community center, and a full gymnasium. In addition, It includes a field house in a separate building that's attached by an enclosed walkway. In terms of square footage, this thing is enormous. In terms of complexity, it has everything you can imagine: mezzanines, second floors, walking tracks, dressing rooms, a restaurant, offices, a daycare center, and community meeting rooms. Even the indoor humidity, cold for the hockey rink and warm for the pool, presented challenges. In terms of installation, our crews had to do it in 2 phases. First, they put up the steel structure, and then the other construction companies had to come and install the pool. Months later, our crews came back to finish the job. Typically, our exterior cladding is a solid color, either white, blue, beige, gray, or green. With our sports complexes, we're often asked to add design elements that enhance the exterior and tell visitors exactly what the building is about. With Fox Creek, our fabric plant had the opportunity to add some great accents and graphics. The fabric team enjoys a challenge from time to time, and Fox Creek certainly let them stretch their creative wings. Lesson 7 is fabrication. Bringing all aspects of our tension fabric structures in-house has been part of our evolution. We began with the fabric plant, welding our own fabric panels for walls, roofs, and walls and liners. Then we began fabricating our own steel beams for the frames. Finally, in 2019, we built our paint shop where we apply our proprietary epoxy shield epoxy coatings. Add to that our own installation teams, and you can see the complete chain of logistics that Legacy controls. There can still, of course, be speed bumps in the process, such as weather and pandemics, but we have ironed out as much as the operational elements as possible so we can deliver what we promise to our customers. Finally, having our own design and engineering team to get the ball rolling is vital to creating a complete project. In a few cases, the ability to turn around a project quickly has made all the difference. Completing this project, a biosolids composting structure in Southeast County, Florida, was a direct result of Legacy owning all the logistical pieces. We knew what we were capable of, and we knew we could meet the challenge of a tight deadline. This was one of my projects, so I was involved in every step of this building. This structure was a very large covered building open to the air, and this project was using a new composting process that diverted biosoliid and yard waste materials from going into the landfill and rather turning it into usable compost very quickly. The process was proprietary and had only been used once before in the pilot project, but it was quite successful. We partnered with TLC Diversified, a water treatment and management contractor, to complete this project. Original plan suggested that the building be split into 2 buildings, but because of Legacy's use of solid steel frames, we could make the entire project into 1 building of 139,750 square feet. That's about 3 acres completely covered by our structure. This composting facility had to be done start to finish in 6 months. 139,750 square feet of building finished in 6 months. That was the requirement of the county. The use it or lose it approach to budgeting for public agencies sometimes makes for incredibly short timelines. Our combined teams collectively analyzed the necessary actions that need to occur, and with communication and support from all parties involved, we knew we could make that timeline. Ashley's going to show a short video here of the install. So we came back to TLC and said, not only can we meet that timeline, we might be able to do better than that. John, he's a project manager for TLC, and he told me the thing that impressed everybody was the fact that Legacy came through and said, hey, we are going to better our time as far as manufacturing and shipping. And if I remember right, it was at least by a month. Installation began the beginning of August 2019 and completed in early September. Other challenges that the team faced were poor soils, more slope than they originally anticipated, and a very rainy season. Nevertheless, the foundation was right on target, all 650 feet of it, and every anchor for the structure was precisely perfect. Dallas, the VP for TLC, said that a lot of the success of this team effort was due to communication. The urgency of the project had everyone answering the phone right away. We all had our problems, but we found solutions quickly. That's what he told me, and it was exciting to build it in 6 months. In a few cases, the ability to turn around a project quickly has made all the difference. Completing this project, a biosolids composting structure in Southeast County, Florida, was a direct result of Legacy owning all the logistical pieces. We knew what we were capable of, and we knew we could meet the challenge of a tight deadline. This was one of my projects, so I was involved in it. Lesson 8 is industries, and we service many industries such as aviation, bulk commodity, mining, state and government municipalities, sports and rec, and many more. There isn't an industry that we can't build for. As you might guess, we've learned a lot about each industry by working with their customers. For example, the equestrian industry taught us how important natural light is to the look and feel of a building. The bulk storage industry taught us that precast walls are great for creating separate storage and mixing areas inside the building. Our sports facilities taught us about how great acoustics inside the fabric building are as composed to a steel structure. Salt storage has continually challenged us to come up with corrosion protection. The military taught us about working with a variety of contracting teams to get the project completed on spec and on time. Working with state agencies and municipalities has taught me in particular how to work creatively with complex contracts and complex construction sequencing. Lesson 9 is quality. A long time ago, Philip Crosby, an expert in total quality management movement, famously said, "Quality is free." What he meant by that was when a company spends time or money to improve quality on the front end of the processes, it pays dividends so quickly you can earn back your investment almost immediately. That has been our approach to our design, our manufacturing, and our installation. In fact, all aspects of our business are reviewed under the ISO 9001 certification process yearly, but it's more than that. Taking a tour of our headquarters is the best way to experience what I'm talking about. New employees are given a tour of the 3 plants, the steel plant, the fabric plant, and the paint shop. It's there where you begin to see how many innovations have been developed over our 10 years. Sometimes it's something small like a fabric cutter that makes it easier to cut pieces without being bent over all day. Often it's more substantial, like an adapter for a forklift that allows our employees to easily move our fabric rolls, which weigh many tons, around the cutting room floor. The new paint shop is a great example of quality driven by innovation. We developed many of the processes for material handling within the paint shop from scratch. The paint shop is a huge space with a booth for blasting and a booth for coating, as well as plenty of storage to stage and dry the beams in the back. Moving the steel through the epoxy process was the first design challenge when creating the building. Bo, our paint supervisor, has been with Legacy for years. He helped us design the very best system. The beams are staged in the entrance of the shop, and then they're hoisted onto a triple beam monorail crane rail system that then carries them through the booths all the way to the drying floor at the end. There are 3 tracks that they hang from. That was one of the early design decisions they had to make. How many tracks to install so the pieces could move efficiently and still give the painters and blasters room to move between them when they entered the booth. When we added epoxy, it allowed us to combine different coatings to get the most protection for the right situations. Unlike paint, epoxy must be mixed carefully. Once the beams leave the blast chamber and enter the epoxy spray booth, speed and careful planning are vital. Epoxy, as you may know, is a 2-part paint system, and specialized equipment is needed to mix the 2 components right before they're applied to the steel. And more safety protocols. Inside the booth, our paint shop coworkers wear a full protection suit and a helmet that has its own air supply. The helmet, rather than being restrictive, is pretty comfortable, airy, and cool. The safety equipment protects them from both the abrasive qualities of the blasting and the fumes from the primer and epoxy. Legacy's quality control runs through the entire complex. It begins at one end of the compound when the stacks of steel and rolls of Exotech arrive, and extends all the way to the building installation of our crews. or with our crews. Material specs are checked and recorded at every step in the manufacturing process, from the steel to the fabric panels to the epoxy coatings. In our 10 years, again and again, we have discovered that when we focus on the quality of our products, design, steel, fabric, epoxy, and even our communications, it drives efficiency and innovation. Ultimately, the end product for our customers is a better, stronger, more attractive structure that they'll be happy with for decades. Lesson 10 is extra credit. Working with the right fabric and the right steel has made all the difference for Legacy these past 10 years. It's helped us construct beautiful buildings that will last decades. Natural light is one of the long-standing benefits of working with fabric. Our white fabric is translucent, and it lets in about 12% of the natural sunlight. That means the walls and roof panels are sort of like skylights. When the whole building lets natural light flow through the interior, a couple of things happen. First, some customers notice that they don't need much electrical lighting, even on cloudy days, because of the naturally lit interior. Second, a naturally lit interior it's very calming. This was especially evident with our equestrian facilities, where the owners told us that the natural light was very important for keeping their horses focused and calm without subjecting them to the elements. In fact, clients in many of our industries comment on the natural lighting. The trick is, you can't really appreciate how amazing a naturally lit structure is until you step inside of one of them. We can try to describe it, but it doesn't do the experience justice. There are a lot of statistics about natural light in the workplace in our white paper on our website, and it's called Let There Be Light. Pat was a principal engineer from TSK Architects for the Winnemucca complex, and he didn't understand the benefits of natural light for horses until working on this project. Once he walked in the building, he couldn't stop talking about how light and bright the building was. When we started working with sports facilities, our customers began to comment on the acoustic differences between our fabric structures and traditional buildings, especially steel buildings. It's much quieter in our buildings, and that can be a distinct advantage in practice facilities where coaches want to be heard. With steel roofs and steel walls, as you can imagine, the echo effect inside traditional metal buildings can be very distracting and noisy. This same acoustical advantage can help calm horses in our equestrian facilities. Even the entertainment venues that we have built get high remarks in acoustics from the building owners. The building you see here in the background, it serves as a flea market during the day and an event venue at night. With large crowds and entertainment, the comments received about the sound have been nothing but praise. Because our structures are more like traditional buildings, we typically have eaves and soffits where roof meets the exterior wall. With our soffits, we can introduce passive ventilation into our buildings. That's important with our insulated buildings because we want some airflow between the exterior cladding and the interior liner to keep the insulation dry. When you work with industrial fabric like our Exotech, you have to take into effect how airtight these buildings are. Once the panels are in place, there's virtually no air leakage either in or out of the building. That's great for heating and cooling costs, but it potentially can trap humidity and create condensation. That's why our passive ventilation is a key feature. James Kessler of Ontario International Airport in California has been in many buildings in multiple different airports. He was very impressed with the natural light, but also the natural ventilation. Being located in Southern California, the temperatures can become quite hot with Legacy's design and passive ventilation system. A 90-degree day outside is really comfortable. It's closer to 75 to 80 degrees on the inside. One of the most significant advantages of using the solid steel frames is the ability to engineer them to support additional loads. That means our storage customers can have the option of hanging heavy things like cranes and conveyor systems from our roof beams. Our sports facility customers can hang nets, basketball hoops, goal posts, and even running tracks from the ceilings. Customers who want to add office space inside the building can do so by utilizing mezzanine supported from above. We've even engineered our buildings to support solar panels on the exterior of the roof. We did a project in Chile that was for copper concentrate. It was as part of one of the largest copper projects in the world. A legacy fabric building was at the port end of the project and was the last stop before the copper concentrate was loaded on the ships. The storage building is big, but what really sets it apart are the multiple tons of equipment hanging from the ceiling, supported by our solid steel roof beams. The conveyor platform itself, which will be supporting other equipment, weighs 250 tons. With all customers, being able to support fire suppression systems and HVAC ventilation it's a benefit that also often helps them comply with local building and safety codes. The solid steel beams in both the roof and the walls give customers a lot of options that they can't get with traditional fabric buildings. It's often a matter of what they want and what they can imagine. Here we'll take another break for a quick poll question.
Please let us know, what portion of this webinar do you find most insightful? The featured buildings/projects, the technical information, product performances and comparisons, or other? We'll give you a moment to respond. Looks like we have really close at 38% the technical information, 36% the featured buildings/projects, and at 22% product performances and comparisons. Thanks for participating. Matt, back to you.
Thanks. 10 years, hundreds of buildings, and millions of square footage of construction have taught the legacy team a lot. As is often the case, when you start improving your product and really listening to your customers, the ripple effects of the changes never stop. Our company has become a constantly evolving laboratory for continuous improvement, best practices, innovation, and learning. It's been a great 10-year adventure, and we can't wait to see what the next 10 years will teach us. Thank you, and we'll open it up for some questions.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Also here to answer questions is General Manager Nathan Stobie and Senior Structural Engineer Dwayne Munch of Legacy Building Solutions. Our first question is, which software is used to calculate those shown structures, in brackets, size and strength, and how is safety of those structures assessed? Also, are there any testing performed to certify the resistance of those structures in real operating conditions?
I'm going to let Dwayne Munch answer that question.
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. We actually here at Legacy use Metal Building Software. It's a company in Fargo. It's probably the largest metal building software company in the world, the most recognized anyway, used by some of the largest metal building companies that you would all know if I listed names. So we use their software, and all of the codes that are like applicable codes for the United States and Canada are readily available to what we use, but they also have other links to European codes and others around the world. So it's a pretty well-known software, and it's very reputable, and we've been using it just because we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything according to what would be considered recognized around the world, a design that would be good. So what was the rest of that question? Was the safety of those structures is assessed. Well, of course, when we design our buildings, we design them, like for instance, in the United States here, the International Building Code, whatever snow loads, wind loads, seismic codes are required. So that will be determined how the tapered members are designed. So we focus everything around whatever the code requires. So we want to meet or exceed anything that's there. Regarding that second part of that question was some of the testing. We've of course done some testing in-house, and that's not going to be as recognized as some of the things that can be done that would be recognized everywhere. So what we have done is in addition to that Florida product approval that Matt mentioned about the fabric and its attachment systems, which of course are designed around hurricane winds. So we have that fabric approval. Also, rigid frame design, of course, is decades old, and we take advantage of that by having the member design that. It's been recognized by building officials and engineers around the world as a quality way to design a structure. Also, the fabric buildings in general, we've being a fabric company, we have recognized some of the decades of success and some failures in the industry. And of course, we've avoided those. We've been able to correct some of the things that have been done in the past with fabric buildings and make them stronger and make them, hopefully, they're going to be recognized as well as steel buildings around the world as being just another option that is just as of quality as a metal building. So that's kind of a. I think did I answer all of that question now? I can't.
Yes.
I think you did.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Next question. How is corrosion taken into account and assessed in the design process of those structures?
So I'm going to answer that question. Corrosion typically is not taken into account, which is why it's so important to ensure that you have proper corrosion coatings. At Legacy here, obviously, you can use hot dip galvanizing. One of the challenges with hot dip galvanizing is it typically just slows the corrosion process down. It doesn't eliminate it, and that is why we put in the state-of-the-art epoxy paint line to basically seal corrosion out of the members altogether. And if there was damage to any given member, the repair of that is really easy so that corrosion doesn't have to become a factor in your building.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question. What is the typical lead time on a 17,000 square feet building?
Well, that's a very direct question. Typically, we would expect lead time to be somewhere in that 2 to 3 month range. Realistically, what we're talking about is understanding what the client is looking for, getting the design parameters figured out, working to do the design drawings. Often the client has to have go through a permit application process, and then obviously we need to work through the once that's all approved, we need to work through the manufacturing and shipment of the building to site. At Legacy, as Matt had mentioned, we also do the install of the buildings, and so obviously that would be added onto that time frame.
Great, thank you. Next question. How long will the fabric last?
Well, that's a great question. Realistically, what Legacy uses with our Exotech fabric is a high-performance exterior cladding material. And with that, we're able to provide a 25-year prorated warranty. And realistically, from an operational standpoint, it will last longer than that, just depending on the environment that is going in. So the life expectancy of the product is somewhere in that 25 to 30-year range. The environmental conditions in that area will impact it somewhat. One of the huge benefits of fabric is that it's non-corrosive, and so it doesn't rust. And so when you get into corrosive environments, that's where fabric performs extremely well.
Great, thank you. Next question. Can I get metal exterior cladding on the sidewalls instead of fabric?
Good question. I think Matt went through a couple of slides earlier on where he was showing a riding arena, and that riding arena actually had metal cladding on the sidewalls. Because the rigid frame is really the exact same frame that's used in metal buildings, the exterior cladding options are really unlimited. You can go with metal building cladding, you could put brick. We are often looking at putting precast exterior walls on the building. The frames are all straight and linear, so it's really easy to add other building claddings into the mix.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. What is the connection design software used for Legacy?
I could take that one. It is still metal building software, MBS software. So in addition to the frame design itself, it'll design the connections. So we have moment resisting connections at the ridge and at splices and at the knee of the building. Also, if you want a moment resisting foundation, or at your instead of a pin base, which is our standard, if they wanted a fixed base, we could provide that also, but that's all designed by the software.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. What kind of foundations are typically used on Legacy buildings?
Okay, I'll take that one also. in addition to any structure, you've got your lateral and your vertical loads that we have to design for. So you wouldn't be surprised to know that most of our foundations are pier and footing cast in place with cast in place anchors. So that's going to be our normal one that you're going to see, but we also have smaller buildings where you're going to have slabs with a thickened edge where you don't have to worry about frost concerns, or you don't have real large uplifts because you're trying to resist it with the concrete. You can have a third option of earth anchors where they're driven into the ground and then they're kind of bolting down the base plate, and where they're battered, they're battered in, so they're resisting vertical and horizontal loads. Or you could have a cast in place pier where you're casting these anchors right into it and then bolting the rigid frame on top of that. And we've also seen screw piles where that's proprietary by other companies, where we would have them design the screw piles for us, and then we might either attach directly to the top of those or cast and place those and set our frame on top of that. So there are a lot of options that we can use, and we do a lot of foundations here as well as the building.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. How do you insulate the buildings, and what R values can you achieve with a capital R?
So the insulation, unlike a metal building where the insulation sits on top of the frame and is sandwiched in between the purlins and the Z-girts and the metal cladding, the insulation for a fabric building or for a legacy fabric building is actually in line with the bottom flange of the rigid frame, and allows us to actually flow that insulation underneath the bottom flange. It allows us to meet energy code in every province and state in North America. And in addition to that, under that insulation, we place our continuous membrane liner panel, which gives not only a nice clean surface, but provides an extremely airtight vapor barrier for that facility.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. What size buildings do you offer?
So Legacy really focuses in on clear span buildings, and so many of the applications that we're involved with are looking for large clear span facilities. Our typical size range goes from about 30 feet wide all the way up to 300 feet wide, which is significantly larger than what many building companies are able to provide in this environment. And so it provides us with an opportunity to solve a lot of challenges out there.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. Can you take care of the whole project, basically serve as our general contractor?
So at Legacy, what we specialize in is the manufacturing and installation of our buildings. We typically will work with a local general contractor together with the client to be able to facilitate the entire process. But we typically are not the general contractor for that project. Realistically speaking, if the job is occurring 2,000 miles away, it doesn't really make sense for us to be the general contractor. And so we work very closely with local contractors who are part of the entire process of building the project.
Great, thank you. Next question. Are they temporary?
Good question. The answer is yes and no. All Legacy buildings are designed to be permanent. As Dwayne has mentioned, they are engineered in the exact same way as any other permanent structure. The nice thing about a fabric building or a Legacy building is that should you need to move that facility, you can actually dismantle it and relocate it to another place, so long as the building still meets the environmental loads, the snow and the wind loads for that area. So it does create a lot of flexibility, and we have numerous clients who are using our building in a certain location for 2 or 3 years and then dismantling it and putting it into another location.
Thank you. Next question. What is the lead time of fabrication for a 6,000 square meter warehouse? And do you supply in the African region? And what is the lead time you will consider?
So we definitely do supply into Africa and have done buildings in Africa already. Again, lead time is a little bit of a variable question because typically the longest lead time is working to figure out the exact design and size that is needed to and the configuration of that building, and that usually is what takes a good amount of the time. Our manufacturing is typically ready to from when the design is finalized and completed. Manufacturing is typically looking at 8 to 12 weeks. Obviously, when you're going to Africa, there's some shipping timelines involved with that as well. But we're experienced in containerizing buildings and shipping them around the world.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you, Matt, for a great presentation. And thank you, Nathan and Dwayne, for answering questions. And thank you, attendees, for joining us. We hope you'll return for future webinars. Bye for now.